Welcome to Impact Innovators with Felicia Ford, where we dive into the strategies that empower changemaker brands to leave a lasting legacy. Think of this podcast as your audio playbook for meaningful action. What's possible when thought leaders, disruptors, and pioneers align to share their journeys? I'm Felicia Ford, your host, bringing together the brightest minds and the most groundbreaking ideas to help you drive change, navigate through the sticky stuff, and elevate your brand. Whether you're tackling funding hurdles, looking for growth strategies, or seeking the perfect balance between profit and purpose, we've got you covered. Stay tuned and be a part of a movement that's setting new benchmarks in how we think about progress, community, and doing. Let's innovate, impact, and inspire. Hey friends, we're back and I'm excited to have this guest with us today. It's talking about one of my favorite topics. So I want you to consider building a business in the digital age means more than just creating. It means knowing how to protect what you've built. For many creators, many on and offline business owners, navigating the legal aspects of entrepreneurship can feel a bit overwhelming, leaving you wondering if you're safeguarding your legacy or unknowingly giving it away. But now you might have questions creep in. Who truly owns the content you've worked so hard to build? What if a partnership opportunity meant to elevate your business ends up costing you control over your intellectual property? Been there. In this episode, we're joined by Casey Handysmith, founder and managing attorney of C. Hardy Law, an entertainment and intellectual property law firm where she helps online entrepreneurs and creatives protect their businesses through intellectual property and contract law. With over a decade of experience, Casey has represented major 7- and 8-figure online brands and negotiated lucrative partnerships with industry giants like Meta, Universal Music Group, Essence, iHeartMedia, Paramount Pictures, and Coca-Cola. She's also the force behind the Contract Playbook podcast, Boss Contract Society, and the Contract Collective, empowering entrepreneurs with accessible legal knowledge to negotiate better deals and protect their work. Casey, welcome.
Well, thank you so much. I'm about to say welcome. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure being here.
Of course. I know you also have a podcast, so I can completely understand being in that seat and wanting to say welcome.
Yes, exactly. Although my podcast is primarily solo episodes, I have done a few guest interviews. And yeah, anytime I'm on a podcast, I have to switch my brain from host mode to just
Right,
guest mode. So yeah,
right,
but
right.
glad to be here.
Yeah, thank you for joining. I'm just really excited to have you here so we can talk all things legal and all things IP. So for those who unfortunately may not be familiar with IP, can you share with us, Casey, what is IP? Why is it important? Why, as a business owner, do we need to be aware of IP?
Yeah, so IP, for those who don't know, is just the short form of saying intellectual property. And these are the intangible things that you kind of the ideas that you initially have, but then you create them in some sort of tangible form. So, for a lot of you listening who may be course creators, maybe you're also a podcaster, just an online business owner, maybe some sort of service provider, the vast majority of the work that you're doing and the things that you create are intellectual property. So they are things that would be protected under intellectual property law. So it's extremely important as an entrepreneur, especially in this online space, that you understand intellectual property and the different ways in which it can be protected. I know one of the things that I get a lot of questions about is the difference between a trademark versus copyright. And so, big distinction there. Trademarks primarily deals with the brand aspects of your business. So,
Mhm.
like your business name, your logo, if you have one, maybe a catchphrase or a slogan, or even just a high ticket offer, like a signature program that you may have the name of that thing.
Mhm.
And then copyrights protect really everything else that you're creating. So, like Felicia, these podcast episodes, that's, protected under copyright law. If you're creating content online, that's protected under copyright law. anything in a digital course that you're creating, videos, transcripts, all of that stuff is protected under copyright law. And so that's kind of a general, I guess, overview of IP. And again, if you're creating anything in the online space, it's extremely important because it's the vast majority of what it is that you're creating. And it's a really valuable asset to your business if you are monetizing those things.
Right, right. So sometimes I would say change makers in particular are great at visions, great at ideas, great at saying, oh, let me put this together. And they might minimize what it means to say, oh, that's unique to you and your business. That's something you've created. So, what are some first steps that people could do to protect their IP?
Yeah. So something that's important to note with copyrights, for instance, the moment that you create something, you own it. So unlike a trademark, if you have put something out into the world, if you have, I keep using the online course example because that's just like kind of a simple one. I think that most people can understand.
Mhm.
Excuse me. So if you've developed an online course, you own that content, even if you haven't registered it. So one of the best things you can do though is to put people on notice of that ownership. So I always recommend including a copyright notice on your various videos and any like written text documents that you have, just letting people know that your business does own this content,
Mhm.
so that there's no confusion around that if it were to come up somewhere later, if someone's a little too inspired and wants to take some of your stuff as their own. So I always say putting people on notice and then also having good terms and conditions as well. So if you are selling digital products. So, for instance, I sell contract templates through Boss Contract Society, like you mentioned, Felicia. And so, on that particular website, I have terms and conditions in place that let my customers know that I've created these things. I own these things. You recognize that when you're purchasing this, you only have the right to use this for your personal use. You only have a limited use license to use this. It is not
Mhm.
fair game for you to now go and take my contract templates and sell them, in your own shop or whatever. So
Right.
having good terms and conditions that you have customers agree to when they're purchasing your products is also a great way of putting people on notice of your rights because trust me, I have seen it where creators, like big course creators, did not have that in place. People come in these programs, they take that stuff, and when you don't have anything to point back to, it becomes really hard to challenge it.
Right. As you were describing that situation, I was thinking about the cliche, or I guess the saying where people say, what is it? What is the term? Um, Something about flattery is the best form of
Oh,
how does it go?
it's like imitation is the best
Yeah,
form of flattery.
that's it.
Yeah.
And I have always thought that was so bizarre because, in the academic world, that's plagiarism. And
Mhm.
and I would
Yep.
say, I'm gonna assume in the legal world, that's copyright infringement or
Mhm.
trademark infringement. How do you think that that myth doesn't exist in your I'm gonna assume it doesn't exist in your world because you just described to us how no, you can't imitate someone else's stuff because it's illegal.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's the interesting thing with intellectual property too, is there is a fine line because at the end of the day, no idea is 100% original, right? Like we're all creating things based off of other things that we've seen, things that we've experienced. So no idea is 100% original, but how you do it is original to you. And
Right.
so that's why you have to be careful about making sure you're protecting yourself from the beginning to let people know that yeah, we may be in similar markets, we may offer similar things, but the way that I'm delivering this product, the way that I've created it is
Mhm,
unique to me. And
mhm.
so it's so funny because you always it's like it's a thin line, but it's always so obvious when someone has just literally copied someone else's stuff. Like, for
Right.
instance, I used to work with a company, I won't name any names, but really large online brand. And they had someone who was a part of their digital course and had taken materials from their course, ended up creating their own course with a very similar name, ended up creating a podcast that was a very similar name as my client's podcast, had various things in the marketplace that were super adjacent. So it's always very clear when someone has not created something original in their own from their own experience versus just like taking what, someone else has done. So
Right, right. Yeah, no, I'm as you're speaking, I'm thinking about a client. I remember we were doing a rebrand for them and they said that our contract was so long. And I think that some people think, oh, we're just going to do business on a handshake or we're going to do business with an email saying, okay, this is what I'm going to charge and this is what you're going to get and that's it. So for those people who are, I'm going to say, contract averse, what are some of the reasons what are some of the reasons why we should consider formal agreements between business and client?
Yeah. I mean, and I wouldn't even say considered. Like, you need to have written contracts in place because people get amnesia about things, people get, again, overly inspired. And so, having a written contract in place, if nothing else from the beginning, I think really helps to set the tone of the relationship. It
Mhm.
helps to show that you are an established business owner, that you're serious about what it is that you're doing. It allows you to really set those expectations of what's going to be in place in this particular relationship. Again, because of course, if you're providing a service, right? People may forget like what services are included or how much it's going to cost, all of that. So the contract allows you to really outline all of those things specifically, when things are going to be delivered. So those are just a couple of the reasons that come to mind initially is that, it helps to make you look like a serious business owner by having a written contract in place, and
Right,
it sets those expectations. And of course, if something goes wrong, if something just doesn't go according to plan, you have something you can actually fall back on that's going to protect you. Because in most instances, if you have a written contract in place, something else I'll say too is a lot of times it can alleviate a lot of those problems because people know that they've signed something, right? So they're a
right,
little bit more prone to act right and stay on course versus, like you mentioned, just like a handshake deal, whatever, like
right.
no one taking it serious. And so they just kind of go with the flow. But when you have something, written in place, both parties have signed, that alone can alleviate a lot of issues. And if there are issues that come up, you have a document that you can go back to say, okay, this is what we agreed to, and then this is the process we follow if you don't want to agree to those terms.
Right. Now, I can only imagine that with the introduction of I'm not going to say AI because it's been around for a while, but with the type of AI that's available now, I can only imagine how that's changed the legal world in some ways. What insight can you share with us about how AI has affected things in the way that you do business or that your clients do business?
Yeah, so I personally love AI. I'm an attorney, but I'm a business owner myself as well. So
Right.
I utilize AI all the time, right?
Mhm,
Like
mhm.
me and ChatGPT, we have all the conversations, we create all the content,
Yes.
So I love AI because it saves me a lot of time. It helps to just put my thoughts in, written form sometimes when I might not know the best way to say something.
Mhm.
But in terms of how I've seen it shape the legal side of things, I've seen it more so on the side of contract review and negotiation.
Mhm.
So this is something that I implemented in my own law firm a while back now, where I started testing out some different AI softwares that help you actually review and redline contracts. And when I
Mhm.
say redline for anyone listening, that just means like editing a contract. So say someone sends you a contract to review and you want to make changes, those markups that you make in those changes is what I'm talking about. That's what red lines are.
Mhm.
Just for anyone listening who doesn't know. And so there is AI software out there that actually will redline a contract for you and will give you different negotiation tips and strategies, and it can really just speed up the process for you.
Mhm.
And so, like I said, that's something that I started incorporating in my own practice just because it saves a lot of time. When I have high volume of contract reviews I'm getting through, especially in the influencer space when I'm working with creators who get a lot of different brand deals and whatnot, it really helps to speed things up. And so when I created my membership, the Contract Collective, which is specifically for influencer talent managers, I noticed in working with some of those initial founding members that some of them were actually exploring AI for their contracts as well. And they
Mhm.
were kind of using it more so to ask questions like, okay, ChatGPT, I don't know what this means in my brand deal. Like, what is, putting that language in and just getting a basic explanation. And
Mhm.
so when I saw that they were already exploring AI, I was like, hey, there are other tools that can actually accelerate your entire review process way more than just getting explanations on what terms means inside of contracts. And so that has been something really fun that I've been able to develop within my membership is actually an AI tool that allows my members to review their contracts as though I were doing it for them. So I've actually established, and I won't go down a super rabbit hole with this, but it's just been a fun process this past year. But I have partnered with an AI company to develop a tool where it has all of the standards in there
Wow.
that where the tool will actually review the contract based on the legal standards that I know to look for in brand deals, just based off of my years of experience. So it's been really cool. Members love it because they're able to use that tool and review their contracts, but then I'm still there
Yeah.
to answer any questions they have.
Yeah.
But AI is powerful, and especially, if you're using it well, you're partnering with it well, you know, it's not something that I would recommend. Like anyone couldn't just create it, right? Like you have to understand the different legal terms and whatnot to
Right.
get the type of results that you need.
Right.
But it's been really cool. So yeah, I love AI. I'm a huge proponent. So
I love that. I love that. And I'm hearing you describe what it's like to work in your membership, but share with us also, Casey, what it's like to work with you as a client and the different ways that someone can work with you.
yeah, so working with me through my law firm is a more customized, done for you experience. So if you are not looking for any type of DIY, you're like, I just want you to handle it for me. My
Mhm.
law firm does handle contract review and negotiation services. So we'll do that for you. We handle custom contract drafting. So if you are, excuse me, an online service provider, for instance,
Mhm.
and you are starting to work with bigger clients and you're needing something more custom, that can't necessarily be covered in a contract template
Mhm.
through like our template shop, then our law firm does draft like custom contracts. And we also, I'm excited, we recently partnered with another firm to bring back our trademark services. So that was something that we had kind of taken off the table for a while.
Yeah.
But I'm excited to have another firm who's partnered with me now. And so that's another service we offer is trademark registration as well for online creators and entrepreneurs.
That's really exciting. I remember when I got my first trademark, I was over the moon excited. And it's kind of like an experience. You're just like, I don't know, for me, I don't think that I could have said, 5 or 10 years before that, oh, one day I'm going to need to or want to trademark my business. But it really does elevate your business brand to be
Mhm.
trademarked, especially when you're working in the world of 7 and 8 figures. It's
Yeah,
great to be able to
yeah,
have your name and your processes, trademark. What does trademarking do for a business? Can you share that with us?
yeah. I mean, what you said, it definitely does in terms of establishing the business. And it just really helps to protect your brand overall. So I have worked with clients who very well known brands, you would be shocked that they didn't previously already have a trademark registration, right? And
Right.
so I've worked with brands where you now have those who are overly inspired in the marketplace who are now using their trademark and race to get their trademark filed before said client. And so, although you do have protections as the first person utilizing a brand, it's a lot more work to have to go back and now fight this other person who's already taken the necessary steps to protect this name to prove that well I've been using it first and longer and they sold it's a whole ordeal.
Mhm.
So that's not directly what you were asking about what a trademark does, but
No, but it's
this is
helpful.
just kind of a cautionary tale
Yeah.
of making sure that when you have established a brand that you are going to build out or that you have built out, it already
Mhm.
has notoriety, go ahead and get that trademark registration because you do not want to have to be reactionary in that process.
Right.
Um, but yeah, it helps to really establish your brand. And it becomes an asset as well because it is something dependent on your business model. If you want to allow other people to use the name, in certain instances, that's something you can now license because you own that intellectual property. So that could be an additional revenue stream for you as well. And so same with copyrights, same
Mhm.
type of thing in terms of allowing other people to use your work. And so yeah, it just really helps to solidify your brand, the things that you built, and it becomes just now an actual asset to your business.
Yeah, no, I can appreciate that insight for those who are considering, because some people get confused sometimes when they see the TM versus
Mhm.
the R. Um, and can you address this debate? I'm going to call it a debate of when it's okay and how long is it okay to use that TM behind a phrase or a name?
Mhm.
What does that mean for people?
Yeah, so the TM is similar to the C that you see with copyrights. The TM just puts people on notice that this is your brand, you created it, you're protecting it,
Mhm.
right? You cannot use the R until your trademark is actually registered. So until you have gotten a registered trademark through the United States Patent and Trademark Office, you cannot use the R. You can only use the TM. So when you see the TM, that just means someone is putting you on notice that this is their unique thing that they've created. So it just puts people on notice. And now something I will say that I don't that sometimes can be a bit of an unpopular opinion in the legal space
Mhm.
is I am all about waiting until you know that this is the name, the slogan, or whatever it is that you want to use. Because the thing with the trademark process is it's an investment. Felicia, I know you've been through the process. It's an investment of time, money, energy. It is a process.
Right.
And so I never, advise clients to this as soon as they have a new idea with a name that we go trademark it next week, right? Because you might change your mind. Or maybe you put that thing out there and realize, oh, this isn't as viable as of an offer or product that I thought it was going to be. So
Right.
like, let's scrap that, right? So I always say, once you kind of establish that, like, okay, this is something I'm really going to work with, use that TM symbol until you
Mhm.
have gotten that registered trademark.
Right, right. You were speaking earlier about negotiations and working with brand deals. So we have clients who are approaching that or thinking about that or looking for sponsors. What is something baseline that people need to think about when it comes to partnering or aligning their brand with another brand?
That is a loaded question. I think there's so many factors, right? And especially like in today's cultural kind of climate, I feel like there's a lot you always have to consider when you're going to partner with another brand, just from a almost like a moral standpoint of like, okay, is this brand aligned with my values and what it is that I stand for in my business?
Mhm.
So that's always going to be a consideration. Now we're talking about like from a legal standpoint, the actual contracts, then you want to definitely look at things like, what type of content is being created under this partnership, making sure you maintain ownership of that. If the brand is going to have, usage rights, which is basically just a licensing of your content, making sure that you're limiting those things to the specific instances that it makes sense and that you're not overextending the usage rights. For instance, I had a client several years ago who was working with a brand, and she came in my world after this already happened, of course, because a lot of times, people can be more reactive when it comes to legal instead of proactive.
Right.
But she had accidentally given up too much usage under a brand partnership that she had signed maybe like 2 or 3 years prior, and then found out that they were now using her content as well as her image in a print form magazine. And that was not even remotely within the scope of what was initially negotiated or discussed under the campaign. But
Right.
because she hadn't realized that in the contract and hadn't reviewed that carefully enough, hadn't negotiated it, the brand legally had the right to use that content in their print magazine.
Mm.
So, it's these types of things that you have to think about, and then you have to
Mhm.
be really careful. Is that you're actually reading the contracts that the brand sends you, that you're
Yeah.
reading beyond just how much they're going to pay you, deliverables, that you're actually reading
Right.
the fine print in there, because
Right.
it might be a couple years before it comes back to bite you, but it can, come back and bite you. So you want to be careful there. But those are kind of the primary things I think of when, partnering with a brand is, making sure it aligns with what you stand for as a creator, as a business owner, and then just being really careful about what's being created under under that partnership and who owns what under the
Right.
partnership.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's good for a lot of I'm just considering how some people, of course, names not mentioned, are approaching work and are so excited about this opportunity or they're so excited about who's approaching them and they just want to move forward so quickly. Casey, what would it look like for you? Who is your ideal client? When is someone ready to call Casey to inquire about services and becoming a client? What does that look like?
Yeah. So one of the things that I've always been really cognizant of is the different stage of business that people are in, which is why I've developed digital products and other resources for online entrepreneurs and creators who might not quite be at that point where they're ready to hire a lawyer one on one, or maybe you don't necessarily even need that, right? So I would say if you're kind of in the earlier stages and you're doing kind of more like standard things that aren't too unique in your space. That's what I have my contract template shop for
Mhm.
if you are looking to have contracts in your business. So again, I mentioned like a service provider, an online course creator,
Mhm.
having those like terms and conditions, those types of contracts in place. Those are great things you can get from our contract template shop, Boss
Mhm.
Contract Society. But if you are at a point where again you're offering like higher ticket type of services. Maybe you've been in the online course space for a while and you've had some experiences, right? With people in your courses,
Right.
and you have some really unique things that need to be added to your contracts. That's a good time to reach out to an attorney or reach out to my firm to say, hey, we need to get something custom in place
Mhm.
for this particular service or offer. And it's so funny you ask this question because I've had clients who 7-figure entrepreneurs doing amazing, who will come to me for custom support on certain things. And in other instances, will go and buy a contract template or utilize some other resource. And so it really depends on what it is that you're needing in that moment, right?
Right. Right.
So so it's kind of a tricky question in terms of when someone's ready, because it's not necessarily like a dollar amount threshold
Mhm.
or, it's really dependent on what it is that you need for your business and what and where you kind of see your business going.
Mhm.
Same with the my membership that we talked about, the contract collective. I
Mhm.
used to only offer like high ticket retainer packages
Mhm.
for influencer talent managers where I would handle all the contracts for all their creators on their roster. So completely done for you option. But of course, me and my team are handling all these contracts that's going to cost you, a good amount of money, right? And so when I developed my membership, it was with those talent agencies who were kind of in that 1 to 2 years. They're working on pretty routine brand deals. Like we're not looking at astronomical, figures and brand deals. Like we're not looking at 6-figure brand deals. We're
Mhm.
looking at 4 or like lower 5-figure brand deals. And
Mhm.
they're just kind of needing a little bit more support on the legal aspects. Because one of the things I will say about the people I work with and that I love working with is
Mhm.
that they're extremely knowledgeable in their industries. Like
Right.
they are very acute business people. A lot, for the most part, they know what they're looking for in these contracts, but
Right.
they just need that additional support on, okay, the brand won't budge on this indemnification clause. I don't really understand indemnification because I'm not a lawyer, right? Like, how do I move forward with this type of thing? And so,
Right.
so I have different kind of options in place, considering where someone might be in that journey and what it is that they're looking for. Because some people might be early on and they're like, I'm willing to invest high dollar because I just don't want to deal with it. So, totally depends on the business owner.
Right. Right. No, I appreciate that you have so many different options because, in this issue of the magazine, we're focusing on Black led, Black founded, Black owned. And some of those businesses, while they've been in business for a while, and we talk a lot about equitable access. And sometimes, again, I won't mention a business name, but they've been in business for over 10 years. And it's, oh, well, we don't have this contract. Or we have a website, but we don't have a privacy policy. Or we have a website, but we don't have terms of use. And to me, it's red flag, red flag. And to them, it's, oh, well, we have known that that we needed that. So again, I appreciate that you have these various ways of serving the community. So if you can share with us what else is happening with Boss Contract Society and the Contract Collective. I love those names, by the way.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so as we mentioned, Boss Contract Society, that's my contract typically shop. So if you are someone who's looking for contracts in your business to protect and support your business, Boss Contract Society is the spot that you want to go to get your terms of use, to get your privacy policies. If you have a podcast, we have templates there for like a guest release, because that's also really important. We won't go into that right now. Um, but that's the spot where you can just kind of go and get your templates. So not a whole lot in terms of anything new going on with Boston Contract Society. It's, it's a resource, it's there, it's available. We do roll out different templates over time as we find to be necessary for our community. And so if you're on my email list, then you can hear about that when, we do roll out new templates and do different, offers and deals and things like that on those. And then the contract collective, so that membership, I don't allow people in on a rolling basis. So I open up the doors a few times a year. And so if you've been listening to this and you're like, I think that's something that I might need, then I would definitely encourage you to get on the wait list for that so that you can know when doors open again for the membership. So that is kind of my baby this year, the membership. That's my newer like offer. And as I mentioned before, where I've been having a lot of fun with the AI stuff in there, and really building out that community. So definitely going to be some things new to kind of come in that space in particular over the next few months. So again, if that's something that you're interested in, or you might need that, definitely would encourage you to join the wait list so that you can get notified when we open doors again.
Awesome, awesome. Now, we've heard a lot about Casey, the founder, Casey, the managing attorney. Share with us, Casey, what was the one thing that drove you into this direction of being and becoming an IP attorney and then transitioning your business into what it is today?
Oh, girl, how much time do we have? because
As long as you
you
need.
because one thing I have learned about being in business over the past 10 years or so is that it's just not a linear process, right? There's no straight route to any of it. Before I went to law school, I initially thought I was going to do something in music because growing up, I was a classically trained pianist. My whole family is very big into music. I love performing and all of that. And it wasn't until I got to college that I learned that we had a music business program at our college. And so I decided to explore that because as much as I loved the performance side of music and like music theory and all that, I've always been, yeah, very much like a nerd with music too. um, as much as I love that, I'm also always very curious about how creatives could really make money with their creative assets besides just like performing and doing gigs. And again, a lot of that came from, coming from a really creative family where, everyone, performs and has these shows, but also you work like a regular 9 to 5 because, bills, right? So
Right.
I was really curious about that program because I'm like, how are creatives like really making money? So anyway, so in that program, I ended up the instructor over that program was an entertainment attorney out of New York. And so in working in those classes, I got an opportunity to learn about intellectual property, work on real like music industry contracts. And it just really like sparked my interest and love for like contracts and IP and how to like leverage that creativity and really monetize it. And so when I initially started my practice, I primarily worked in the music industry. So working with artists, producers, all of that jazz. And so it was kind of a few years in when I started to see the possibilities of the online space in that world.
Mhm.
Um, Long story short as possible, I was like exploring some things on my own. I had a blog where I was talking about like legal issues and IP. And from there, I started being asked to speak at these like blogger conferences about intellectual property. And so
Mhm.
that's when I started to learn more about like the online business space because I was meeting bloggers who had really successful online businesses. They're like, okay, well, how do I protect this from a legal standpoint?
Mhm.
That's how I started working with in the influencer space because a lot of them had big communities that brands wanted to tap into. So they were also getting these brand deals. And so it's just been an interesting evolution, I guess, over time of
Yeah.
taking the things that I've always loved and have been interested in, particularly with intellectual property and helping creatives not only protect their work, but leverage it for other opportunities as well. And so, been doing that with my law firm for a while. My other businesses and products, that has come more through just life. Uh, Evolving, becoming a mom, needing more time with my family. And so
Mhm.
looking for different types of business models that aren't just in exchange of my time, right? So looking for
Yes.
more scalable type of business models. So that's kind of how that aspect has evolved, right? So and being
Yeah.
able to just help more people too. Because one to one, you're just, you're a bit more not that you're a lot more limited
Right.
in how many people can serve people. So
Yeah,
yeah.
no, I appreciate you. Thank you for sharing that. And, you know, I love creatives. I'm a creative. I love talking to other creatives and seeing how creatives leverage that creative knowledge with the business and the strategies and how that comes together. I spoke with Casey Lauders the other day, who's a professional podcaster, and she went to SCAG and all the things. And she's also similar to you, was like, I see artistry and I see artists, and I'm also not going to be a struggling broke artist. So how can I,
That's
right? How
yeah,
can
that's
I
right.
do this and how can I create this? So no, I really appreciate hearing that. And there's been a couple of other guests who are artists or 9 to 5ers with artist lifestyles as well. But Casey,
Yeah.
how can our audience stay connected with you and keep abreast of what's happening in your world?
Yeah. So I'm on social media. LinkedIn is probably where I spend most of my time these days. And so LinkedIn is just my name, Casey Handysmith. So you can connect with me there. I'm also on Instagram and Threads. That's how I actually found out about your podcast, was over on
Yeah.
Threads. So I'm on Instagram and Threads at Contract Casey. You can connect with me there. Connect with me on social. You'll see all my links to join my email list, join the wait list, my template shop, all the things we talked about in this episode. So, connecting with me on social is definitely the best way to initially get connected and see all the different things I got going on.
Incredible work. Thank you, Casey. If there's
Mhm.
one thing you'll leave for our guests today, what is that one thing?
Oh, for entrepreneurs, I would say to put your work out there. Don't be afraid to do it. Make sure that you're knowledgeable about what it is that you're doing. That's why I love podcasts like this. So don't be afraid to go after that big idea, to try that new thing, because there are resources out there to help you in making sure that you're protecting that work as you are building your dreams and as you're building your legacy. So
I love it. I'm not going to say anything else. Thank you again, Casey.
thank you.
Hey, Changemaker, real quick before you go, if today's episode helped you in some way, the best way to thank me is to head over to Apple Podcasts, subscribe to the channel, and leave a review. I'd also love to connect with you over on social. You can find me at Friends Call Me Fee. Until next time, keep changing the game.